districts are going to have much more of a say-so as to how Long Beach is run. And black people in Long Beach represent the second largest community in Southern California. Now, what that represents sociologically, economically, and politically is extremely important, both in terms of purchasing power and in terms of voting power. If you look at the percentage change and the gains in the Long Beach Unified School District, it becomes much more obvious. There is an other here that we don't know how to define because the U.S. Census doesn't lump, or rather does lump Samoans, Native Americans into an other category. But what is happening in Long Beach is that there are some fluctuations in that other category. And we need to really parse further into the statistics and find out just who are those people? You know, who are the people, the faces behind those statistics? Because that's an important group. I mean, that's a large percentage when you consider other. You know, that should be much more of a face there. As we look at the enrollment figures, Latinos at this point, about 52% of the enrollment in Long Beach Unified School District. They're probably about 55, 56% now. We'll have those figures out shortly. But what we also will have out is where do the students live as opposed to where the students go to school. Because that's really important in Long Beach because 40% of the students in Long Beach are bused outside of their neighborhoods. So that when you get a report on the schools in Long Beach, you don't really get a report on the students, you get a report on the schools. And what we need to understand is, what about where the students live? Because we might very well be suffering a brain drain, that our better students may be going to the better schools, which doesn't leave us with any role models for our average students who can say, well, God, if Joe can do it, I can do it too. Because Joe is now going to Wilson, you know, or in some poly-pace program that's taken out of his community. He doesn't interact with his community anymore. So the students, where they live, are equally as important. Now that's a tremendous policy shift for the school district to give us the information on where the students live, because it raises the issue of maybe our students ought to be going to school in their own neighborhoods rather than taking them out of our neighborhoods, enhancing schools outside of the neighborhood, and then denigrating the academic performance of the students in our own neighborhoods. When you look at the English language arts on the California Standards Test, since the test has been given in 2000, 2002, 2003, all of the test scores have improved for all students. But there's an important thing happening here. The code here is the red are African Americans. The dotted line are African Americans in the target area. The green are whites, the light blue are Asians, and the yellow is the norm for Long Beach. So as you can see from this chart, we start out higher, and like all students in Long Beach Unified School District, we descend. So that by the time we're in the 11th grade, can you imagine? 79% of the students can't pass the California Standards Test. Yeah. Can you believe that when I made a presentation on the east side, one of the white parents said, oh no, that has to be wrong. And said, because our students are doing much better than that. Because they didn't have the data. And it's important that we have the information so that we can begin to make policy decisions about those issues that affect our children. Notice also that from the time of the second grade, there is an academic performance percentage gap between blacks and whites that doesn't go away. So that even as the blacks and the whites rise and the blacks and the whites fall, the same percentage gap is there. So that by 11th grade, you've got almost a 30% academic percentage performance gap between whites and blacks on the California Standards Test. It's even worse when you look at mathematics. Yeah? And so it's bad for everybody, And yet we have a school system that gets awards. So the question becomes, why are they rewarding the school system? If 79% or 70% of the students are not passing, something is wrong with that system. Now, it may be that that system is doing all that it can possibly do. So maybe we need to reframe the problem into one of a community problem, not an educational problem. So the question becomes, what can we do as a black community to help improve the academic performance of our children in school? And that becomes a rather key issue. Well, moving on, there are other things too. And our dropout rates are too high. Whites' dropout rates are lower. Almost 1 out of 5 of every one of our students that enter school drops out. So those that are there in school, we have a critical mass in school, but by the time we're at the 11th or 12th grade, 23% of those have dropped out. Similarly, you look at our graduation rates. Our graduation rates are lower. So even though our graduation rates are lower, we still have fewer who are graduating because more are dropping out. And if you look at the A through G courses, those are the ones that qualify you for applying to the University of California or the California State University system. You see again where we stack up. So that education becomes a critical matter for us in Long Beach. Now you ask, well, how does that relate to health? Well, it relates to health in the sense that when you look at the life expectancy of black people in Long Beach, our life expectancy is lower than all of the other ethnic groups. So get this now, our life expectancy is lower. When we get into school, our dropout rates are higher. We operate from an academic performance deficit from the time that we get in school until the time that we get out. We graduate students at lower rates, and we graduate students at a lower rate who are academically qualified to apply for, not to get in, but to apply for California State University or UC system. So in a sense, we really are an endangered people in the city of Long Beach. If we look again at one of the other issues that I'd like to rush through, we look at cause of death. Now, cause of death for most of us all in Long Beach are the various cancers, the carcinomas. But when you look at African Americans in Long Beach, the diseases related to the circulatory system, heart attacks, hypertension, diabetes, we're highest in those areas. Why do you figure that? Second, in those areas.